Hello, and welcome to Luminex's Coronavirus Virtual Webinar. Today, we are going to talk to you about Luminex's flexible solutions for SARS-CoV-2 detection. We have a number of topics and information to share with you today, as you can see here in our agenda. But first, let me start with some introductions. I'm Sherry Dunbar, and I'm the Senior Director of Global Scientific Affairs for Luminex, and I'm very happy to be speaking with you today. I'd also like to introduce my co-speaker, Dr. Erin Benfield, who is the Senior Director of Molecular Applications for Luminex. To begin, let's recap the events that have transpired over the last 6 months and have brought us to where we are today. We know that many coronaviruses can cause common cold respiratory illnesses, but others, like the first SARS coronavirus and the MERS coronavirus that followed several years later, can cause very severe disease. In December of 2019, we heard of the first reports of a novel coronavirus of zoonotic origin that was causing pneumonia in the Wuhan province of China. The virus, now known as SARS-CoV-2, causes the illness designated COVID-19, and it has spread rapidly across the globe. By May 2020, 5.7 million people had been diagnosed with COVID-19, and over 350,000 had died. And in the United States, over 1.7 million cases had been identified, with more than 101,000 deaths by the end of May. U.S. and global cases have continued to rise in the weeks since these data were reported. And also, we do see some evidence of flattening the curve in various locations. Now, let me review some of the quick facts about the illness. The incubation period for COVID-19 is thought to extend to 14 days. Hence the recommendation to self-quarantine for 14 days after exposure. However, the median time to the onset of symptoms is thought to be approximately 4 to 5 days. The most common symptoms are fever, dry cough, and fatigue. But there can be a wide spectrum of symptoms, including aches and pains, nasal congestion, headache, sore throat, even diarrhea. And the loss of taste and smell is reportedly quite common. Everyone is at risk for infection, but the majority of individuals will have only mild to moderate symptoms, but those with underlying medical conditions, the elderly, and the immunocompromised are more likely to have serious illness. And the fatality rate is highest in the immunocompromised and those 65 and older. So what can we do to combat this pandemic? First, we need to have rapid diagnostic solutions so that we can enact effective infection control and isolation protocols. We need to be able to perform epidemiological monitoring and serosurveillance in the community so that we can implement specific health policies to try and prevent the spread. But ultimately, we need to have effective drugs to treat the illness and an effective vaccine for immunization against SARS-CoV-2. So where does Luminex fit in this picture? Well, it's in the rapid diagnosis category. Luminex is a provider of flexible molecular testing solutions for the diagnosis of infectious diseases. We understand that labs come in all shapes and sizes, and there is no one-size-fits-all. So to address the needs of various laboratory settings, we have both targeted tests and broader syndromic panels. And these are available in multiple formats. Our sample-to-answer solutions that fit into the moderate complexity laboratory are available on our Aries and Verigene platforms. And the more high-throughput options for the high-complexity lab are based on our XMAP bead array technology and run on the MagPix and Luminex 200 platforms. Our diagnostic tests are focused in 4 major areas of infection: respiratory, gastrointestinal, women's health, and healthcare acquired infections. And we also have some molecular tests for genetic diseases. In response to the COVID-19 pandemic, Luminex was able to rapidly develop and deploy 2 SARS-CoV-2 molecular assays that have received emergency use authorization by the FDA. The NextTag CoV-2 extended panel runs on our MagPix instrument, and the Aries SARS-CoV-2 assay runs on our Sample to Answer Aries platform. Now I'd like to turn it over to Aaron, who will describe each of these assays in detail and share some data on the clinical and analytical performance. Aaron, take it away.
Thank you. Thank you, Sherry. So up first, I'll be discussing the NextTag CoV extended panel. This targets the SARS-CoV-2 via the ORF1ab, N, and E gene. It's very high throughput and can do up to 96 samples at a time. It's very cost effective, but it's also highly complex. This is developed for our MagPix system. It also requires nucleic acid extraction up front. The preferred sample type is a nasopharyngeal swab. It can be run as a standalone test or alongside our NextTag respiratory pathogen panel on the same plate. The total turnaround time, including the extraction step, is at 4 hours. As far as the workflow goes, is initially you have to do nucleic acid extraction. And following nucleic acid extraction, approximately 35 microliters are pipetted into a plate. You can do up to 96 samples at a time, or as little as 1 sample plus a couple of controls. The way this is pipetted is you're aspirating 35 microliters from your extract and piercing a foil well, mixing up and down, and then resealing it with a foil seal. This is then placed on a thermocycler, where it thermocyclers for about approximately 2.5 hours, and then finally analyzed on the MagPix. The MagPix read takes about 30 to 45 minutes for a full plate. When we did our limited detection studies with the NextTag CoV panel, the only thing available to us at that time was purified genomic material from an activated virus. So this was simply spiked into negative patient UTM, extracted, and then run through the entire system. In order for us to show limited detection of any assay, we need to be able to show it can pick up that concentration at least 19 out of 20 times. This table just depicts different levels of LOD and what we saw, as well as the raw signal in the form of MBD for the 3 different genes. The limited detection was established at 5,000 genomic equivalents per mil. Again, this was using purified viral genomic material. Since then, we've been able to secure some inactivated virus, and it is our thought that we can go lower. It's just not what we can claim in the PI at this time. We've also did some in silico inclusivity analysis, which include 177 sequences of the ORF1ab gene, 188 sequences of the N gene, 176 different sequences of the E gene. We were able to show that we had over 95% homology to all analyzed sequences. We're also able to show that the allogous set for N gene was over 95% homologous to all but 6 recently submitted sequences to the gene database. As far as the in silico cross-reactivity analysis goes, we were able to show over 80% homology with a few pathogens are listed here. Mycobacterium tuberculosis, Legionella, as well as Pseudomonas, and SARS, or SARS-1. However, no anticipated amplification or detected of these non-target organisms is expected. The other assay I would like to cover is the Aries SARS-CoV assay that is also emergency use authorized by the FDA. It targets the ORF1ab and N genes. It's moderately complex. It's got moderate throughput and allows you to run 1 and up to 12 samples per instrument per batch. So some of our customers run 2 samples that come into the lab. They just run those 2. Others, you can run up to 12 per instrument. It is a closed system, which reduces the potential for contamination. Its preferred sample type is also nasopharyngeal swabs. It has minimal hands-on time, and the total turnaround time is approximately 2 hours. Here's a close-up of what an Aries cassette looks like. You'll notice that it has some information within a sticker as well as a barcode. The barcode enables the instrument to identify the cassette, the assay type, the lot number, the expiration date, and so on. On the back, the only cassette preparation step is to peel off a foil seal prior to loading sample. Now, just looking a little closer at the workflow, you simply prepare the cassette and add 200 microliters of UTM or equivalent, close the sample tube. Then you load that cassette into a magazine, which fits up to 6 samples at a time. Then that magazine is loaded onto an instrument. And finally, the instrument will run and automatically result out each sample. This can be done either through an LX interface or manually. We also did very similar experiments to determine the limit of detection for the Aries SARS-CoV UA assay. In this case, we just did several dilutions and then determined what concentration of the material we could pick up 19 out of 20 times. This was performed initially with purified genomic material and then subsequently performed with real intact and activated virus. And that's what we have presented here on this next slide. The LOD was determined at 333 genomic equivalents for Aries, again, using an activated full intact virus. We also did in silico inclusivity and cross-reactivity analysis. That inclusivity analysis included 177 sequences of ORF1AD and 188 sequences in the N gene. We had 100% homology compared to our primers in those sequences analyzed in the database. As far as cross-reactivity analysis goes, we only observed the SARS-1 or SARS coronavirus with over 80% homology to our primers. There's no anticipated amplification or detection of any organism that isn't targeted by the SARS-CoV-2 assay. I want to take a step back and just provide a quick overview of how the molecular applications assist customers in their implementation process. The first thing we do is we'll contact a customer, have a phone call 1 to 2 weeks before we're on site to just understand what the needs are of the lab, namely their desired go-live date, any kind of training that's needed, different shifts or multiple people, understanding how long that will take and how many days that's spread open, understanding any kind of verification, study assistance they need, as well as clinical education needs. We then will send a molecular application specialist for on-site training. They will provide unlimited number of staff, unlimited number of training to staff or days or shifts. We do provide an assay instrument and software overview from sample to result is what we want to set people up with. We are able to provide verification support in most instances. For example, we do have a sample bank that supports most of our FDA cleared applications out there. We unfortunately do not have samples for the coronavirus applications, but these samples can be obtained from other laboratories or your own lab. When we are on site, we can review a verification study plan. We also have template and other tools if the laboratory needs it. We also have an IT implementation manager whose sole job is to provide IT and LAS support. He can go on site or he mainly assist people with the LAS orders build, making the tests reportable and orderable, as well as interfacing those results, working with the laboratory as well as third-party LAS vendors. Lastly, as part of the implementation piece, we have some clinical education specialists who can perform physician education where needed. Now, I'd like to turn it back over to Sherry to conclude our talk.
Thank you, Aaron. So in closing, I would like to thank all of you for joining us today. And I also want to let you know where you can get more information about Luminex's flexible solutions for SARS-CoV-2 detection and everything else. I want to make sure that you see the latest articles and product information that's available on our website as shown by the links here. We have a few articles about implementation of the Aries SARS-CoV-2 assay in a variety of laboratories around the world. We also have product sheets available for both Aries and NextTag. We also have this information available on all of our websites for our global offices around the world. And be sure to visit our virtual booth right here at the Labroots Coronavirus Virtual Webinar. Here we have a list of the references that were used for the preparation of this presentation today. If you're interested in further information, you can also check those out. And then with that, I would just like to say thank you, and we are available to take any questions you have.